Think about your brain for a second. It's this amazing biological supercomputer, a massive electrical grid running on trillions of tiny, perfectly timed sparks. It's basically a symphony of signals. But what happens when there's a short circuit? What happens when that beautiful symphony just collapses into pure chaos? So what you're seeing right here, that's an EEG. It's a recording of the brain's electrical activity. Normally, those lines would be a nice, calm, rhythmic wave. But this is a chaotic, out-of-control scribble. That's the sound of the symphony turning into just noise. It's an electrical storm raging inside the brain. It's a seizure. And when those electrical storms aren't just a one-time thing, when they become a recurring pattern, that's what we call epilepsy. We're not talking about a single event here. Epilepsy is a chronic condition, defined by this tendency for these unpredictable, disruptive storms to keep coming back. And the scale of this is just staggering. This is not some rare condition. We're talking about more than 50 million people around the world who are living with epilepsy. That makes it one of the most common serious neurological disorders out there. So what's causing all these brainstorms? Well, that's where things get really complex. The list of potential causes is huge. It could be your genetics, it could be a head injury, a stroke, an infection, you name it. But here's the really wild part. For a huge number of people, we actually have no idea what the cause is. It's a complete mystery. It can really affect anyone, at any time. Now, it's super important to understand that not all seizures are the same. Figuring out the type is absolutely the first step to treating it right. They basically fall into two main buckets. You've got focal onset seizures, which, just like the name says, start in one specific spot. And then there's generalized onset seizures, which involve the whole brain right from the get-go and almost always cause a loss of consciousness. Okay, so if a seizure is the brain's electrical system going haywire, how in the world do we get it back under control? The whole answer really comes down to this fundamental balancing act that's always happening in the brain, a constant tug of war between an accelerator and a brake. And this is a fantastic way to picture it. In your brain, you have a neurotransmitter called glutamate. That's your accelerator, telling your neurons to fire. On the other side, you have GABA. That's your brake, telling them to calm down. A seizure is basically that tug of war gone horribly wrong. Either the accelerator is floored or the brakes just completely fail, and the whole system gets tipped into this state of hyperexcitation. So to stop a seizure, we have to get that balance back. And this is where the pharmacology gets really, really clever. We're going to look at three main strategies for basically hacking the synapse to bring order back from all that chaos. Here's our game plan. The medications we use, anti-epileptic drugs, they aren't just a blunt instrument. They're tactical. The first approach is to dampen the initial spark. The second is to beef up the brain's own natural braking system. And the third is to go in and modify the message itself. So let's break down each of these. Strategy 1, let's dampen the spark. Every single time a neuron fires, it depends on these tiny little gates called sodium channels opening up. During a seizure, these gates are just flying open and shut, totally out of control. So the hack is to use drugs that stick to these channels and basically force them to take a longer cool-down period. If they can't reopen so fast, you slow down the rapid firing and calm the storm. And here is the truly brilliant part. These drugs are use-dependent. What that means is, when your brain is just chugging along normally, the drug doesn't do a whole lot. But the second a seizure kicks off and those neurons start firing like crazy, that's when the drug really goes to work. It's such an intelligent design that lets it target the seizure activity without messing up normal brain function too much. Okay, so that was about taming the accelerator. Strategy 2 is the total opposite. Why not just press harder on the brakes? This whole strategy is about boosting the effects of GABA, the brain's main chill-out neurotransmitter. If we can make those natural calming signals stronger or last longer, we can give the brain's own braking system a turbo boost. And there are two main ways to do this. You've got drugs called benzodiazepines, and they make the GABA receptor open up more often. Then you have barbiturates, which make it stay open for longer. Either way, the end result is the same. More negative ions flow into the neuron, making it hyperpolarized, which is just a fancy way of saying it's much harder for it to fire. More brakes, less seizure. Simple as that. Now, for our third strategy, we need to zoom in on a very specific kind of seizure that needs its own unique solution. It involves something called the thalamocortical circuit. You can think of it as a feedback loop that helps regulate consciousness. In a specific type of seizure called an absent seizure, this whole circuit gets stuck in an abnormal rhythmic loop. So, what's actually driving that weird rhythmic loop? It turns out it's a special kind of channel called a T-type calcium channel. So, you can probably guess what strategy number 3 is. It's incredibly targeted. We use drugs that specifically go in and block those channels. It disrupts the rhythm, breaks the loop, and stops the seizure at its source. So, there you have it. 3 core strategies. Now, let's actually open up the toolbox and see what medications doctors are working with and how they pick the right tool for the right job. This table really lays it all out pretty clearly. You've got to match the drug to the seizure type. So for focal seizures, a sodium channel blocker like carbamazepine is a fantastic choice. For those really specific absent seizures we just talked about, ethosuximide, the T-type calcium channel blocker, is the go-to. And then you have your broad-spectrum agents, your all-rounders, like valproate, that use a bunch of different mechanisms to cover more bases. But, and this is a really big but, hacking the synapse is not without risks. These are powerful, powerful drugs that change your brain chemistry. That means managing this stuff requires incredible care, especially when it comes to side effects and drug interactions. And these potential side effects can be really serious. Valproate, for example, has 3 black box warnings from the FDA for things like liver damage and birth defects. Other drugs can cause severe, even life-threatening skin reactions. One is kind of famous for causing cosmetic issues, like making your gums overgrow. See what I mean? It's never just about stopping seizures. It's about managing the whole person. And to make it all even more complicated, you have to worry about drug interactions. You see, a lot of these medications are processed by the same machinery in the liver. So one drug might speed that machinery up, which clears other drugs out too fast and makes them less effective. Or another drug could slow the machinery down, causing other meds to build up to dangerous, even toxic levels. It's a serious juggling act. Which brings us to the clinical bottom line. Managing epilepsy requires constant vigilance. Doses have to be tweaked, and every single new medication you add to the mix has to be carefully considered for how it might throw off this incredibly delicate balance. So let's bring it all back together. Looking right at the synapse, we can see our entire toolkit in action. We've got our drugs that block sodium channels to dampen the spark. We've got the ones that boost GABA to bolster the brakes. We have those highly specialized agents that target the T-type calcium channels for absent seizures. Each one is just a different tool, a different way to hack the synapse and get that critical electrical balance back. It's an absolutely incredible toolbox, one that has changed millions and millions of lives. But it leaves us with a final, really fascinating question. You see, all of these strategies are about controlling seizures after the problem has already started. So as we get better and better at understanding the brain's wiring, you have to ask, what's the next frontier? How do we move beyond just controlling these electrical storms to maybe preventing the fire from ever starting in the first place?